Hello everyone, and welcome to the SoulsBorne tier list. So this is a video that a lot of people have been wanting me to do. I understand it as well, that I love my SoulsBorne games. There is a particular feel when it comes to what exactly a SoulsBorne game is, and you're going to learn some of that from me today, as well as where I put things in terms of a, S tier, A tier, B tier, C, D, and non-applicable. So the first one, so we're going to just go ahead and get started. We're just going to roll with it. So in the non-applicable, we are going to put Sekiro. First off, I'm not much of a fan of Sekiro. It's a decent game. It has its love in the community. However, I don't really consider it a Soulsborne game. It has some Souls-like qualities, but it's more of a Tenchu game than a Soulsborne game. It's not a bad game. I'm just saying I don't consider it a Soulsborne game. So we got that out of the way. So first we're going to start off with Demon's Souls. So I remember when Demon's Souls was hinted about for the PlayStation 3, a lot of people thought it was going to be a Kingsfield game. A lot of us thought it was going to be. But it didn't. It was what was considered the prototype formula that was the Souls formula. It had a lot of issues. It was very cryptic in a lot of ways. Was it a bad game? No, I wouldn't say it was a bad game. There's a lot of things that they definitely needed to iron out, and you could kind of tell that there was like two different aspects going on in the creation of the game. And I honestly like the mechanics for the original Demon's Souls. It's definitely not the perfect game. I'm going to put the regular Demon's Souls at a high B tier. The reason for it is it was the prototype. It was, an idea that they came up with, because most of the time when it came to From Software, they were known for Tenchu, they were known for Armored Core, and they were known for Kingsfield. There was other games that they did as well, but that was kind of the shtick that was, From Software. But if we're going to talk about the original Demon's Souls, we are going to talk about Dark Souls 1. Don't worry, I will be getting to Demon's Souls for PlayStation 5 very, very soon. Dark Souls 1 is a very good game. It was a bit of a change of when it came to, like, when I played the original Demon's Souls versus Dark Souls. They got rid of a lot of the complicated crap, like world tendency, which was in Demon's Souls. While they did, kind of up like the difficulty when it came to bosses. Because when it came to Demon's Souls, not a lot of the bosses were really hard, per se. Some of them had gimmicks, of course, because that's just what the Souls formula started off with, and there's still gimmicks in a lot of the Souls games. However, they got rid of the complicatedness that was world tendency, and they kind of fixed a lot of the long runbacks to bosses, because originally in Demon's Souls there was a lot of how can I put it? There was a lot of hard enemies to go through just to get back to a boss. And shortcuts became more of a thing in Dark Souls 1. And of course, when it comes to me talking about, like, games from here on out, this is also me also putting their DLCs into this as well. I love Dark Souls 1's DLC. The whole thing with Artorias and Calamite was really, really good. Not really much of a fan of Manus. That's just my opinion. You know, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them. However, Demon Souls, as it is a B, Dark Souls 1, I'm going to be giving that a amazing A tier. Dark Souls is a game that I do visit here and there. It's fun. It's very, very fun. However, I do feel that Dark Souls Remastered, it's still an A tier, but it's a higher A tier than Dark Souls 1. They fixed a lot of jankiness when it came to it. They fixed a lot of stuff. It's still the same game, but they added more things and they added more FPS. And they fixed a lot of jank that happened, especially the one when it came to the slowed frames per second when it came to Blighttown in the original Dark Souls 1. They fixed that and remastered. I always loved Dark Souls 1. Hell, I, on my off time, always revisit it once in a while. I love it. Dark Souls 2. So me and Dark Souls 2 has a very interesting history. Dark Souls 2 was one of the first games I ever pre-ordered because I was excited for it from what the developers were showing us at certain events before it came out. And I felt very, very let down when it comes to Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 also was a game that I rage quitted at one point because it just made me very, very angry. I still dread going to Dark Souls 2. I really do. I hate this game. However, it's not the worst game I've ever played, though. But when it comes to Dark Souls 2, I am going to give it D tier. That's just me, you know. However, there is a game worse than Dark Souls 2, and that is Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. Scholar of the First Sin is trash. They made it much more complicated to get the DLC keys as well, while you had to quote-unquote fish for them in certain random locations in Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. In regular Dark Souls 2, they just give you the fucking keys. They changed a lot of small little things as well that kind of made the game a little bit more tedious. Some people will understand the differences between Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. If it's possible, don't play Scholar of the First Sin. I know it's going to be very, very hard for you to play the original, but there was a lot of cool concepts that were in Dark Souls 2, but I felt that Scholar of the First Sin made them worse. There is some good things about it, hence why I didn't make an F tier for this, simply because Majula is one of the most beautiful hub places you'll ever see. There is some really cool armors that you can collect in Dark Souls 2. And there was also sometimes a quote-unquote secret event back in the day that would happen in Majula, downstairs in Kale's house. If you know, you know. I'll let you guys look it up. But I was there for that, and it was very, very cool. So, yeah. Now we're going to get into Bloodborne. Bloodborne is an amazing game. Is Bloodborne a hard game? Yes, it can be. Like in the beginning parts when you're trying to start off, sure, Bloodborne can be a very, very hard game. I love the Eldritch Horror aspect of Bloodborne. I love the Gothic aspect of it. I also love the fact that there is no equipment load. You have to deal with different clothes. And yeah, the clothes pieces have resistances. However, it's one of those cases where fashions kind of become more key than certain resistances and defenses. Especially if you decide to do a Blood Level 4 run. If you're going to die, you're going to die looking good. You know what I mean? However, Is there certain things about Bloodborne I don't like? I mean, of course, you know, even with some of your favorite games of all time, there's always going to be a couple little nitpicks that you have. I don't like Orphan of Kos. I think Lawrence, the first vicar, is absolute trash. I love a lot of the Chalice dungeons. This is just me. I love a lot of the Chalice dungeons. I like a lot of the lore when it comes to the game. And if I was going to do a lore video, that would take many, many hours. And lore in Bloodborne is like an onion. There's many layers to it, and once you get to the middle of that said onion, you'll notice that there's like tiny little pieces of layer that you can peel off as well as chopping up the middle of an onion. Now, even with the convoluted lore, I love a lot of the bosses. I love a lot of them. Cleric Beast is an amazing tutorial boss to show you how weird beasts can be. And of course, you know, Father Gascoigne, very, very good boss as well. Bloodborne will always be an S tier game. And plus, I love parrying in Bloodborne. While regular Souls games would give you the ability to parry with a shield or a dagger, you parry with a gun. And I like that. I love the parrying with a gun. I love that system. So yeah, Bloodborne is S tier for me. Dark Souls 3. Me and Dark Souls 3 have an interesting history with each other. I'll always love Dark Souls 3. However, I feel that this was the one game where I kind of felt like they were half-assing some of the stuff. For example, at one point in my past, I would have said that Dark Souls 3 was an S-tier game. Now, that's kind of changed as I've gotten older, platinumed the game, played it numerous times, and made builds with a lot of different weapons, because I used to be a build maker back in the day. But a lot of the aspect of Dark Souls 3 is kind of the difference between Dark Souls 1 and the aspect as well. Because Dark Souls 1 is more, I wouldn't say open world, but a more open beginning, because it really depends on how you feel on which boss you want to tackle your first time. In terms of Dark Souls 1, for example, you can choose to go for Taurus Demon. You could go for the Moonlight Butterfly. Many different boss starts that you could do. Hell, the Gargoyles could even be your first boss. And that kind of went a similar pathway in Dark Souls 2, where depending on the route you took would be which boss that you'd probably end up choosing to fight. Dark Souls 3 kind of changed it to a more linear aspect, where you have one set path. Sometimes that set path can branch into different paths, but it's not too much. It's mainly a main path you have to follow. Period. I always had a bit of a hit or miss when it came to the DLCs. Also, by the way, the Bloodborne DLC is one of my favorite SoulsBorne DLCs of all time. I forgot to put that in there. It's in there now. Dark Souls 3, I love the Ring City DLC. However, I felt that the Painted World of Ariandel was a little bit... I felt it was too short. And I'm not much of a fan of Elfriede, or Sister Frieda, as most people call them. I call her Elfriede due to the lore. But I felt that the Painting of Ariandel DLC Part 1 could have been longer. The Ring City, however, is a little bit longer, and I like the Ring City DLC. Of course, you know, not many people in the world are fans of Dark Eater Midir. I like Dark Eater Midir. Slave Knight Gale reminds me of an Artorias 2.0. I love Slave Knight Gale's fight. The The twist at the end when it comes to the last boss in the base game of Dark Souls 3 is pretty cool. It's a bit of a hit or miss in the community. Some people feel that there wasn't enough hype for the final boss. However, if you know the lore of the other Souls games, you'd understand that there's a lot of connections to the final boss versus you. In terms of Dark Souls 3, I'm still going to give it an A tier, but it's going to be lower. It's going to be between Dark Souls Remastered and Dark Souls 1. Simply because I guess you could say Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3 are like yin and yang. There's good things about them both, bad things about them both, but they're loved kind of equally, if that makes any sense. Alright, we got to get into Demon's Souls for the PlayStation 5. So Demon's Souls for the PlayStation 5 is a very beautiful game. However, it has its own bugs as well, and I felt that Bluepoint, that made the remake for Demon's Souls, I feel that they were taken off the project too fast from Sony. Because there was rumors going around that we were finally going to get a snowy area giants thing as a DLC for Demon's Souls for PlayStation 5, because it was hinted that it was going to be for the original Demon's Souls. Did we get that? No. They tried to fix a lot of things in the PlayStation 5 version of Demon's Souls that were in the PS3 version of Demon's Souls, but they ended up trying to fix so much that they added their own bugs, especially with the camera system. One big issue I have with it is, while you can delete a character with ease in PS3 Demon's Souls, kind of like, with Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, they didn't add that feature for PlayStation 5 Demon's Souls. In order to delete a character, you have to delete your whole save file, including your other characters, to make a new character. I think that's absolutely asinine, and it's really freaking stupid. I feel that a lot of the redesigns for bosses and enemies were not needed. For example, the fat judges in Demon's Souls, I liked their PlayStation 3 version more versus the PS5, because they made them more grotesque looking. And while Bloodborne has its own grotesque stuff, and of course Elden Ring, Miyazaki never really wanted a lot of grotesque stuff in his earlier titles like that. Keep in mind, like that, he does do some grotesque stuff, but not of the caliber that PS5 Demon's Souls does. One of the big gripes I had was Flame Lurker. When it came to Flame Lurker for PlayStation 3, I understood the way the music was. I understood even the look for Flame Lurker. And while PlayStation 5's Flame Lurker's music is really, really cool, I feel it's too epic for Flame Lurker. Also, some of the changes to the look and his AoEs really frustrated me. I also feel like they made Dragon God a little harder in the PlayStation 5 version versus the PS3 version, because I never really had issues with getting through Dragon God's gimmick versus in the PS3 version versus the PS5 version. One of the other big gripes I have is the PS5 Demon's Souls, I feel, were going to be set up for failure when they made it only PS5 exclusive. Now, I understand that the original Demon's Souls only came out for PS3. That's understandable, because that's Sony for you. However, they could have done a PS4, PS5 release, and I feel it wouldn't have died and gotten obscured as fast as it did, because right after it came Elden Ring. But Demon's Souls, I'm going to have to put that at C tier. While it's a beautiful game and it's worth at least one playthrough, I don't feel it's worth it for the platinum or anything like that. Elden Ring. So me and Elden Ring also have a very interesting feel with each other. Simply because when it comes to Elden Ring, when I first played it, it was actually a very, very cool game. It's still a very, very cool game. Keep in mind, there's also some very, very cool bosses in Elden Ring. The lore, as convoluted as it is, because it's a FromSoft game, the lore for Elden Ring is also very, very good. I love the character creating system. I love the different classes when it comes to Elden Ring that you can choose from. I'm always going to be a wretch kind of person because, one, you start off as at level 1, and 2, you can build off of that level 1. Yes, you're technically a naked man or a naked woman with a club, but hey, Oonga Boonga never hurts anybody, right? So Elden Ring, like I said, me and Elden Ring have a very interesting little relationship because while the beginning of Elden Ring, it's and also its optional bosses in like the catacombs or caves, as you want to call them, or even the mines, are good, I feel that they slowly started to run out of ideas. And they also made a lot of bosses much harder than they should have been. Now keep in mind, this is just my opinion. My opinion is like an asshole. Everybody has them, okay? However, I feel the game started to get extremely hard when you first meet Fire Giant. When you first meet Fire Giant, originally in the original release of Elden Ring, which I have played before all the nerfs and everything, there was many ways that you could cheese Fire Giant. There was even many ways to cheese some of the other bosses in the later games. Those ended up getting patched out. Some of the cheeses these days that you hear about in 2025 can still be done, but they're very, very hard to pull off. I'm never going to love Fire Giant. I think me and Fire Giant have the worst relationship ever. I hate him to death. Also, somebody at From Software must have a boner for the Godskin duo because they pop up a lot in this game. And I'm sorry, but you're never going to be Ornstein and Schmo. You're never going to be that tag team from Dark Souls 1. It's just not gonna fucking happen, no matter how much you try. While Elden Ring is very, very good, it's going through some issues that I was a bit afraid of when it came to FromSoft games. See, they, in a way, a lot of Souls games these days are telling the same story. It's just told in a different aspect. And then, of course, you know, we had George R.R. Martin doing the story for Elden Ring, which was cool, you know, aside from his backlash that he has in the socials these days. But I'm putting those aside and putting him as a book writer. You know, I thought that was a really cool collaboration. However, it's one of those things where a lot of people wished Elden Ring was Dark Souls 4. I'm kind of in that same category, but Elden Ring in my brain will always be a Dark Souls 4 because a lot of people cherish the Dark Souls games even still to this day. Hell, I know some people that still do challenge runs on Dark Souls 3. Can you believe that? But also, when it comes to Elden Ring, there's also the Shadows of the Erdtree DLC. While there was good bosses in Shadows of the Erdtree DLC, one of my main gripes about it, honestly, is mainly just really two things. So, get with me on this. One, even though Miyazaki said that the DLC was going to be as big as, I think he said, Limgrave, that's honestly a bit of a lie, but also a truth at the same time. He stacked a lot of different areas on top of each other, and I think me and a lot of other people got lost, and still to this day get lost when it comes to where to go, except for certain challenge runners. They know how to do it, leaving that up to them. I still to this day get lost in Shadows of the Erdtree DLC. Give me the base game and I'll know exactly where to go, just in a snap. Okay. But then there's the final boss. Now I know that there's people that haven't beaten Shadows of the Erdtree, but I'm not going to spoil it for them. Okay. However, let's call the final boss. Let's see. I guess we could call the final boss Big Man. We'll call him Big Man and Golden Man. There we go. Big Man and Golden Man. Alright, so Big Man has a first phase. I actually like the first phase. I think the first phase is fun. But then there's phase 2 where Big Man meets Golden Man, and I think that's absolute trash. I hate them as a tag team. I hate them a lot. And for lore reasons, it pissed me off. I wanted the final boss to be Godwin. I did. Did we get that? No. And then, we're going to go back to the base game here for a minute. Okay. Melania is one of the hardest bosses now up to date when it comes to who is the strongest SoulsBorne boss. And for interesting reasons. I do believe that she deserved a little bit of a nerf in maybe phase 2. This is just me, okay? But I feel that her little self-healing thing she would do with her sword could have been either toned down or taken off completely, because she automatically gives you the Scarlet Rot, and her waterfall dance becomes almost undodgeable. That's just me once again. And then there's Moog. Moog is an interesting boss. He's a tank of a man that wears robes. And while his phase 2 can be toned down by a certain crimson tier, why would you really want to get a tier just for one boss? Okay. Now, when it comes to like Margaret Shackle, for example, that's a completely different story. Because you end up seeing Margaret in different places, and of course, Last of All Kings, Oben King, yeah. It's kind of the same with Moog, because Moog has a shackle as well. And while it's very, very hard to get Moog shackled, there is 2 different Moogs in the game. One that's called Sewer Moog, and one that's called Moogwin, as I call them. You probably call them something completely different. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it gets harder as you get to late game, and for the most interesting reasons. Now, when it comes to the final bosses of the base game, that's also a very interesting little thing. Because, for one, when it comes to Gideon being one of the few final bosses, I think that was really stupid. That's just me, though. I just think that's stupid. I don't mind Godfrey / Horaloo as a final boss as well. I didn't mind that as well at all. Ratigan is what I wish Lord Gwyn from Dark Souls 1's final boss would have been. That's what I wanted. But, of course, we got it in Ratigan. Sure, why not? Elden Beast, before the patch where you could ride Torrent around to fight Elden Beast was really, really hard without Torrent. Now, with the patch, it's kind of become more of a joke. So what would I rate Elden Ring? Just regular Elden Ring. So back in the day, I would have given this maybe an A or a B. Now, if I was going to split the two from main game to Shadows of the Erdtree, I would have given Shadows of the Erdtree a C. Because I just don't really adapt well to it. Is there good bosses in it? Oh yeah, like I love Midra and the Abyssal Woods. I love Mesmer. You know, yeah. But the base game is a B. A very high B for me. So I'm just going to put Elden Ring at B tier. It's definitely going to be higher than Demon Souls for PS3. Now Night Rain. So Night Rain is definitely a different left fielder for the SoulsBorne franchise, because they kind of got rid of the RPG aspect and made it more roguelike, made it more randomized, and made it to where you play either with you and two other people to make trios, or you can play it solo, but it's very, very hard playing solo. This video's coming out before the rumor of the duos comes out, so my review might change a slight bit, but I have mixed feelings on it. So I like to main Iron Eye and Wilder. They're my two favorites. I get through places more with Iron Eye. I'm a very supportive Iron Eye. I use all the character traits of Iron Eye, while also with Wilder as well. I don't really vibe with Raider. I feel Raider has one of the worst stamina regions ever, and I really wanted to like Raider, but his stamina sucks major ass. Yes, I know you can get relics for it, but even still, like, come on now. When it comes to Guardian, I like Guardian. I might start practicing Guardian soon, because he's a really, really good tank. However, I hate his roll. He doesn't roll. He glides. He just glides to the side. If he had a roll, I'd probably play with him more. Plus, I like being a shield poker. You know, I don't mind being a shield poker if it comes down to it. Duchess is fun. I like putting relics on Duchess that increase her vigor a bit more, and like the base of her vigor, because her vigor is terrible within like her first couple levels. Recluse, I'm not much of a Recluse fan. However, I think she's absolutely beautiful, and I like her lore. Revenant, I like her lore. I do like the fact that she's more of a support system with her summons, but I'm also not really much of a fan of Revenant. However, her memes are absolutely hilarious. Executor, I like Executor. I sometimes practice with Executor, but not as much. He's just not my type of playstyle. But I love his lore. I love his lore because I've been slowly getting into his lore. And then, of course, this is coming out like before any DLCs as well are coming out, because I know DLCs are planned for this game. But it's one of those cases where this is From Software's first roguelike experience. I have my issues, but I also know that this is like their first roguelike. I'm giving them a bit of a pass on some of their mistakes that they've done. I love the fact that it has like the whole randomization of loot. It also can be hit or miss, especially if certain bosses or Night Lords have a certain affinity weakness and you're unable to get that said weakness onto something in the open world. And plus, you know, before people are like, oh, you should have like a starting armament with that said weakness, like poison to gaping jaw. Well, also, comment section, you have to play enough to get those random relics to see if you actually get it. So yeah, put that in your pipe and smoke it. What would I give Night Rain? I tend to be more addicted to Night Rain than Elden Ring, funny enough. I guess I'll probably put Night Rain between Dark Souls 1 Remastered and Dark Souls 3. I think that's a good spot, because when it comes to the games that are in S tier, A tier, and maybe B tier, those are games that I know that I would revisit. Just simply enough. And like I said, Elden Ring has a high B tier. But hey, you never know. It might actually change. You never freaking know. So yeah, this is my SoulsBorne tier list. Do you agree with it? Do you not? If you have any comments to share, put them in the comments down below. Yeah, that's that. I finally made a tier list of the SoulsBorne games. Are you proud of me? But yeah, as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I am your friendly neighborhood gaming machine, and this was the SoulsBorne tier list. And until I see everyone in the next video or live stream, take care, everybody, and I hope you have a good week or weekend.